Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to an all-new Let's Draw with BJ Dell. I'm your host, BJ Dell, and in today's new Q&A video, I'm going to answer the questions that you guys left for me over the past week on Instagram, Facebook, and here on YouTube. We're going to talk about art, the overall creation process, Procreate, how to start selling your art, how to do niche research, talk about selling on platforms like Merch by Amazon and Redbubble. There's a lot to cover. I mean, I'm going to talk over an hour today in this video, so if you want to hear me ramble and answer your questions, I mean, you're stuck at home, I'm stuck at home, so let's be stuck at home together and learn. Keep watching. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and jump into today's Q&A video. When I put these questions out there and thought about doing this video, I thought about just talking back and forth to the camera, but instead of doing that, so you guys don't have to see my stupid face for the entire thing, I'm gonna do something here on the iPad in Procreate based around the first question today, and then as I answer more questions, I'll keep working on that. So you've got something cool to watch as I talk. And the first question comes from Bad Squirrel Art on Instagram and says, color for me is still a huge learning curve, but I always want to push myself to learn more. I've done some pieces in ZBrush and Blender, but wanted to color them in Procreate. Is there a different method to adding color to 3D as opposed to 2D, or is the process relatively the same? So awesome question, Bad Squirrel Art. And I contacted them on Instagram. They sent me over this piece that they did in ZBrush, this really cool ninja piece. I had a black background. I already went through and removed that. So we're left with basically just the character itself. So a really good question, awesome piece, by the way. So you guys should definitely check over, hop over to Instagram, check out Bad Squirrel Art. But we're gonna talk about this one first and then hop into more questions, and I'll throw them up on the screen just like this one. So first thing I did, like I said, remove the background. So we're left with just this piece here. There's no background, transparency there. So I'm gonna make a new layer. I'm gonna set this layer to clipping mask. So everything that I draw on this layer is going to just attach itself to what's down here. It's not gonna go outside on that white. And then I'm also gonna set this to a different blend mode. So let me go ahead and let's pick a color for the outfit. I'm gonna go with, let's just go with like a kind of darker blue color, kind of a mix between sky blue and darker. Let's do that. So if I start to color on this with just the normal blending mode, you're gonna see what happens here is it's just gonna cover everything. So you're not gonna be able to see through that. So instead of doing that, if we go ahead and that layer that we made, we hit this N here and we change this to multiply. Everything that we color then on this layer, you're gonna be able to see through to what's on that bottom there. So we don't lose any of that information. It doesn't totally cover it up. It's just multiplying on top of that layer. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna go ahead and drag and drop this in. So it's gonna change the entire thing. Make this a little bit lighter so you can see it better. Seeing on the TV, it's coming up a little too dark. There we go. So usually with this, what I would recommend, if you've got a area of the character like this, the clothing is going to be the biggest piece of the character, to kind of fill in the entire thing with that, so it saves you from going in and having to hand color everything. This is going to be a little bit different because we are going in and we're hand coloring, so you're not going to do a lot of dragging and dropping. Actually, that's the only dragging and dropping we're going to do with this. So that's got a lot of the base stuff filled in. And then from here, I'll go ahead and go in and start coloring in the other portions. This is gonna be a little bit different than your regular coloring style, like I've shown in my tutorials before, just because, like I said, this is gonna be actually going in and coloring. It's not gonna be using drag and drops. So for this, fill this in, I'm gonna use the airbrush on this and just kind of go around and start to fill in these colors. So I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. And then just kind of start filling in these areas. I'm not too worried about staying in the lines as far as like this. The eyebrow is going to be different, so we're going to change that later. Basically what I'm trying to do here is I don't want to go outside on this blue. This one doesn't really matter. I'm going to change that because that's like a trim piece. And I'm not worried about, not going over the eyes here because I'm going to do those on top of this. So it's going to be different here in a second. So I'll just start to fill these in as I change layers and as I start changing other stuff around. I'll kind of walk you through that as I answer more questions, but fantastic question. Like I said, Bad Squirrel Art, check them out on Instagram. Next question up is from Thrift Shop Profit, do you plan on expanding the cartooning tutorials with things like clothing, facial hair, fur, etc.? Yes, there are going to be more tutorials coming from the Cartooning 101 series. Those are in the works. So this is something I want to talk about a little bit because the Cartooning 101 videos, they're a little bit farther apart than my regular videos, and there is a reason for that. So the way that I first thought about doing the Cartooning 101 videos was really to approach it from the standpoint of anybody that's trying to draw for the first time. They can follow along and kind of put the same principles into practice. So this is really more kind of like designing a syllabus and trying to go back and forth and see what works for, you know, the newbie learner. It's kind of hard sometimes to figure out exactly what's going to work for everybody. Something might work for somebody with a little bit more, you know, experience and has been drawing for longer. I don't want to leave those people thinking, okay, this is just some really basic stuff. And at the same time, I don't want to go back in and do stuff too complicated for other people. One thing here I'm going to show you real quick, switching back. I'm going to turn this back off clipping mask for a second. And I'm going to make a new layer up here. I don't know if you saw that when I started doing this line in here. One thing that happens with the multiply is that your colors are going to change. So you can't just select that and draw right on top of it again. It's going to be a different color. So instead of doing that, what I want to do is get these base colors, make a third layer up here, and then I'm just going to use this kind of like a palette almost so that I know exactly what's going on. They do save in here, but I just want to have them up here so I can quickly hop back and forth. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and turn this back on clipping mask. Select that blue again. And go back in here and color that back over here. There we go. Okay, so anyways, back to Cartooning 101. Like I said, a little bit more of a syllabus type approach to that. So there's a lot of trial and error. I'll film videos for it and hand them off to a few people to kind of try out first, give me feedback on them, and then go back to the drawing board and try to change things, you know, a little bit more, kind of fine-tune stuff. And it really is kind of a learning process for me too, seeing what works for different people. I want to provide as much value with those as possible, so I don't want to rush things and put them out. I'm also using a lot of the comments from people that are left on the current 101 videos so that I can better kind of know what worked and what didn't with those. So it's really, like I said, just a kind of fine-tuning thing. So that's why those are a little bit spread out, and I don't rush those as much. There's not as many back-to-back as those. Especially if you think about the videos that I do with the tutorials and just drawing stuff. So let's say that the mouse tutorial that I just did, or the dinosaur tutorial, it's basically just drawing one image. And with the Cartooning 101 videos, I want to provide, you know, a bunch of different options in those videos. So, you know, it's different. Let's say with the eyes. So you've got different eyes. I'm not just showing you how to draw one single eye in a video. I'm showing you a bunch of different eyes. Likewise with the like the hairstyles, I'm showing you a bunch of different hairstyles. So once we get into some of the other ones, like the next in the series is going to be the posing of the characters and, you know, how to draw bodies in different poses and action forms and shapes and stuff like that. It's going to have to be, you know, a bunch of different poses and shapes in one video. It's not just showing you how to draw one single one. So trying to figure out the best way to approach that. There's a lot that goes into it. Because the main goal with these is, yes, I want you to follow along and, you know, get some information out of them. But I don't want you just to sit there and copy the exact drawing and do it over and over again. The goal is to eventually get you to a point where you see the basics, you see how the shapes form, you see what goes into, you know, the kind of underlying sketches that you do, and then be able to do stuff on your own. So, you know, just showing you like a pose for one single character and making that an entire video. All you're going to be able to do going forward is just draw that same pose over and over. So I want to give you a little bit more to go off of, and that's why, but there are more coming. So thanks for that question, Thrift Shop Profit. Next one up is Tangy Muddy. Have you ever had a difficult client? What's your favorite commission piece you've ever made? Have you ever had a client cancel payment after you made the piece already? So we'll take those in a few pieces here. Have you ever had a difficult client? Yes, I think anybody that has ever done client work or commission work has had a difficult client. Honestly, I think from a artist standpoint, a lot of clients are difficult just because, let's be honest, clients are asking you to draw something because they can't do it themselves. They're not an artist. That's going to happen 99 out of 100 times. That really kind of makes it hard for you because they know what they want, they can see it, but since they're not an artist, they don't know what goes into making the piece. Likewise, they don't really know how to, convey what they're looking for. It's hard for them to kind of tell you exactly in terms that you understand. So that's one of the difficult things, and you're going to have that with a lot of clients, to be honest with you. The thing that I think is the hardest with clients, and there's definitely ways that you can go about this to kind of ease the pain of this, is when you get done with an entire piece and the client says, that's not what I had in mind. So there's a few different ways, like I said, to ease into this, and I'll tell you my tips and tricks here. So number one, usually with a client, what I'll do is I will start out with a sketch process first, and I'll design just a couple of versions of a sketch and, change things here and there and send them over a few different options to kind of go off of initially. This kind of helps me kind of see where they're coming from. And then I'll go back in and do a second sketch using kind of their feedback after that. That's usually how it's set up in my contracts that I work. If, they get usually 2 to 3 to 4, depending, sketches initially. They get a follow-up sketch after that. And then if they don't sign off on that, they'll get one more sketch after that. If something from there still doesn't work out, then there's parts in the contract that says that there's going to be extra charges for any extra sketch work after that if something's not agreed on. And then once everything is approved from there, I will go ahead, if it's a design that's like let's say like the mouse drawing that I did in the previous video. If it's a design like that, from there, I will go ahead and do the inking process, and then I'll send that through and make sure that they sign off on that. And then from there, I will go ahead and do the coloring process and the shadows and so on and so forth. If there are any changes requested after that, then basically the client signed off on everything. So then it starts to cost the client more if you've got to go back and do extra work. Definitely, if you are doing client work, have contracts set up. If it's a new client, especially. So it kind of protects you because a lot of clients will try to take advantage, and you'll get an entire piece done and they'll want to start over from the beginning. And if you've got it in the contract that says that they get so many sketches, they get this, and then after those things are met, if you deliver the final product and it's based on what has been kind of agreed to and signed off by them along the way, they really don't have any course of action to say, well, that's not what I wanted, because you've got proof that they signed off on every single thing that you provided to them already. You really have to protect yourself from getting taken advantage of. But it's definitely a trying thing working back and forth with clients. That's why I've said in previous videos I actually don't take any client work anymore. Everything I do now is just for myself, and honestly, it's made me a lot happier as far as that goes. You know exactly what you want to do. You know exactly how you want something to look when you're working on it, and you don't have to worry about that back and forth. And that's something that I personally just love so much. It's made me happier as an artist, and hopefully that everybody kind of can get to that point. I know it's kind of the dream to get clients, and then once you get clients, it's kind of the dream to start doing work on your own. But that's my suggestions for that. So like I said, definitely use contracts and just of course, you've got to be courteous and you've got to have some tact as far as, customer service goes. But at the same time, do not allow yourself to get kind of railroaded by a client or taken advantage of. You definitely, have rights and need to stick up for yourself, but you need to have tact when you go about it. So that's part of the first part of the question. What's your favorite commission piece you've ever made? I had this, I think a couple of people asked this. Honestly, the thing that I've enjoyed working on the most was the Unicorns and Zombies card game that came out last year. That one I worked on for years back and forth, and I think that one just was fun and I liked the most just because, number one, it was one of the biggest projects I ever worked on. I mean, there was, you know, so many illustrations that went into that game, plus it took so long. And then on top of that, seeing that, you know, it was released and had positive reactions, so on and so forth. I've done some pretty big projects before that the person that decided to, you know, hire me for the stuff didn't actually end up releasing the project. Even though I got paid, it's still kind of like one of those things. You do super hard work and you're looking forward to, you know, seeing what you made in print and seeing it available for purchase, and then having, you know, a client say, well, here's, you know, we paid you and you're taken care of, but we're not actually going to release it as planned. It's kind of a blow and kind of sucks, but hey, it's one of the things that happens. So, but yeah, Unicorns and Zombies plus the main go-to on that, my boy Jason, we just really kind of hit it off, and we had a lot of the same interests, same favorite artists, which really kind of led me into hooking up with him for the project. And it was kind of cool to have that friendship develop out of it. So there was a lot of good things that came from that. I was able to do LA Comic-Con last year, which I had a video all about that, kind of showcasing the game. They had a booth there, and they had me out for the official LA Comic-Con launch of the game, which I'll go ahead and link that video up in the cards up top. If you guys didn't check that out yet, definitely hop on over and watch that video. Kind of shows you some of the gameplay and stuff like that. So that's the second part. And have you ever had a client cancel payment after you made the piece already? So no, not really cancel. So here's the thing that you need to keep in mind. Once again, with contracts, if it's a new client they're working with, this might change if it's somebody you've worked with in the past, but if it's a new client you're working with, I always require half up front before I start working on the project with a signed contract. And then at the end of the project, before delivery of the final piece, basically I will send off just a really low res version of the piece along with some pretty heavy, crazy watermarks, which they have to sign off on. And then they have to make the final payment for me to send the actual final piece. If they don't send the payment, they don't get the final piece. So have I had issues with that before? Yes, I've had issues with them not making the final payment, but once again, they don't get the artwork. That's where you have to protect yourself again. Make sure you're not sending off this artwork. But if that does happen, personally, I just try to, if it's something that I can, I try to use that piece for something else, or you know, there'll be something I'll try to do with it so it doesn't feel like a total waste of time for me. And that's kind of my suggestion there. So that is it. Once again, like I said, half up front, half upon completion. Another thing too to keep in mind with that is sometimes if you're working with a client, it's up to you at that point what you want to do. If it's somebody that you trust, that you've been working with for a while, usually I'll find if it's something like that I've been working with the client, it's usually they'll just pay, you know, completely up front. You've kind of established a name for yourself with them. There's a trust factor there. So if they know that they're going to get what they paid for, usually they don't have a problem, you know, paying for everything up front, but that's totally up to you on a case-to-case basis. So that's a awesome question. So thanks so much for that. Let's see, next one, Sofka, I don't have questions. I just like drawing with you. Well, that is awesome, Sofka. I appreciate that. Really fantastic. Thanks so much for giving me that feedback. I keep switching stuff here and now I'm lost. There we go. Next one up is Shelly O'Pearls. About copyright, let's say an artist has drawn a character that has a similar hairstyle and weapon as a well-known existing character, but the rest of the clothing, etc. is different. But the viewer can probably guess it's fan art. If the artist never references the original character's name or origin, is it safe from copyright infringement? Are there differences enough to imply another character who has similar features and weapons? So if you want the technical, like black and white answer, no, that's not enough to kind of claim that it's not copyright infringement. Basically, I guess the way that you can look at it is, what am I doing here? Soft, small airbrush. I'm on there. I'm on the clipping mask. And that's, not sure, there we go. Not sure why that was a little bit darker down there. Okay, so that if you have a character, if you're incorporating something from another character, if you have the viewer look at the item or the artwork and they can tell like, oh, this is blah, blah, blah. So let's say, just using the video game reference, so let's say you've got like Cloud from Final Fantasy and you've got Cloud's haircut and sword on another character, and somebody looks at it and your intention is for them to kind of recognize that that is supposed to be kind of a take on Cloud from Final Fantasy, then yes, that's obviously copyright infringement because you're using somebody's IP as a basis. Now, a more, I guess, non-black and white answer gets into use of the, the parody and fair use kind of clauses and stuff. So that is something that's a little bit different with parody. With that, think like Garbage Pail Kids cards, how much they got away with being able to do parody on, really popular stuff. But even with them, there was, a lawsuit back in the day when they came out from the, the makers of Cabbage Patch Kids, because obviously on top of the parodies of popular stuff, it was also a parody on Cabbage Patch Kids. So that's something to consider. And I guess the even more non-black and white and more gray area is the way fan art is looked at. So obviously, if you're throwing something on a t-shirt and selling it and it has to do with somebody else's IP, of course, that's really frowned on. Companies come after that, but if we think about it, and if you've been to like Comic-Cons before or stuff like that, there's the artist alley and there are artists selling, tons of prints of artwork using famous characters, and companies are okay with that. It is deemed fan art. But once again, it's, somebody else's IP. So it's really this kind of gray area when you start talking about that. I know companies are a little bit less forgiving once you actually put it on products. So I always still steer clear of it, to be honest with you. For me, I'd rather make my own stuff. It's not important for me to kind of piggyback on that stuff. Of course, you would, have the opportunity to get more sales, but that's exactly why I stay away from it, because the ability to get more sales obviously tells you that you're using that IP from somebody else or that intellectual property for somebody else to make those sales. So I think that's where a lot of people kind of try to ride that line, because they know that people want that type of stuff. Somebody's going to kind of desire, a picture of Spider-Man doing something more so than they are, just one random character that you designed out of your head. So keep that in mind. Like I said, no real hardcore answer that I'm able to give you there as far as telling you what to do with that, but those are my thoughts on that. So really good question. I know that one happens a lot. A lot of people have asked too, when I've posted videos about the coloring books, can I do a coloring book of, Mickey Mouse or a 70s cartoon show, stuff like that? And once again, the answer with that is no, because you don't own the rights to the characters or the intellectual property. And when you see stuff like that, like, oh, well, there's these coloring books out, a lot of companies do license the rights. And that's once again too why a lot of companies will come after you, is because that's one of their revenue streams from their IPs is, they're able to license. So you have to pay the company a fee to be able to make products based around their characters. And that, like I said, that's one of their revenue streams. So that's something that they are going to kind of protect tooth and nail. So just because you see something out there doesn't mean that you can do it. There's reasons out there that people might be able to do it. And there's also, the reasons why people are doing it, and you see it and you don't realize that they're really not able to do it, and you don't really know what the repercussions from them down the line could be. So I say stay clear, play it by the book, and don't put yourself in a position to where, you could have a big company come after you. So next one, I would like to learn about, and this is Sylvia Brandmeier, I would like to learn about your current setup to do the videos, how you make sure to stay inside the frame all the time when you turn the iPad. So I'll stop right there. So as far as turning the iPad, I don't turn the iPad in the videos. I turn the canvas, so the physical iPad never turns. So that's really not an issue. You're just turning the iPad and not the turning the canvas and not the iPad. What thoughts do you consider before shooting the video? Honestly, with that, once again, it's, you know, kind of deciding what is going to be the, you know, most beneficial for the audience watching. So how do I walk through the steps? How do I make it easy to follow? So on and so forth. And that's the main thing that I think of when I do the videos. Now you see this one, this back here is a little bit darker. This, I'm kind of making these the same color as these strings here. So I want these to be a little bit brighter. So I think I'm gonna make a new layer now, and I'm gonna set this to clipping mask as well. And I'm gonna change this from multiply to, let's see, I don't know if lighten will work better. Lighten's a little bit too dark there because it's covering the entire thing. Let's go, oops, let's go with, let's see, color dot. Color dot just too much. And this is just kind of a back and forth trying to see exactly what looks the best. Try a soft light. Yeah, soft light looks good. So see, you can still see the shadows here underneath. And I'll go back in and kind of shade this a little bit to kind of show it's a little bit darker. But this is one of those things where you might not be able to use the multiply the entire time, but some of the other multiply, or some of the other layer properties on there will work for you as well. So we got that, and then we'll switch back here. And then let's see what else here. Let's see, how do you place the lights? You won't cast a shadow, equipment, questions, and things like that. So as far as lights, shadows, equipment, you might have missed it. I put a video up, last week, the week before, all about my setup. So definitely go back and check that out. It's on the YouTube channel. So one thing that I really find funny, I guess people just don't go through and look, you know, at the different videos if they don't maybe get an announcement or something. But I get a lot of questions asking me to do videos or asking me to explain, you know, how I do certain things. Like this one especially, you know, is a good example. And it's something I've already done a video on. So definitely, if you guys are looking for certain information or want to find out certain things, definitely hop back and check out just the overall, you know, page of my YouTube channel to see what I've done videos on before, because chances are I might have done a video already on what you're looking for. So really great questions though. So thanks, Sylvia. Next one up is Will Adams. Do you think it makes a difference in artwork if you have the iPad Pro or a smaller version? I have the 2019 10-inch and love Procreate. Just curious if the Pro's bigger screen is the only extra benefit. Love your work and your channel. So thanks, Will. I appreciate it. So yeah, there is a difference besides the screen, which once again is something I've talked about honestly quite a bit, almost I feel like to death on my YouTube channel. So the big thing with the Pros and the regular iPad versions is that you have different RAM in the different models. So the more RAM that you have, the more layers are available in Procreate. So if you have a Pro model, those had 4 gigs up until the new ones, which have 6 gigs. And the more gigs you have, the more layers you have in Procreate. That's really not the case with the new ones because Procreate hasn't been updated, which I just talked about in my iPad 2020 review video. But this is something I touched heavily on the video of what iPad should I buy for art in 2019 that I put up early last year. And the Pros, like I said, with Procreate, on a 4500 by 5400 canvas in Procreate, you get a maximum of 18 layers. With the older 2 gig models, you got, what was it, 4 layers? I can't even remember off the top of my head now. I think it was 4 layers. And then I think the newer, like 2019s that came out, the regular ones that had the 10.2 inch screen, I think those had 3 gigs of RAM, and Procreate did release an update to where you got a few more layers with those. But personally, I find the more RAM, the more layers available, the better for my creation process. It's just one of those things that I know people, when they start out, they say, I don't need that many layers. I'm not a serious artist. But honestly, if you start playing around with stuff and see some of the cool effects you can do with shading and just making new layers and stacking them on top of each other and using clipping masks like I'm doing here, you'll go through those layers really quick. Urge you to watch. I'll throw this up in a card. That video that I did about the bananas, and you'll see I used a lot of layers. It's really simple. It's a very basic way to approach art, very basic way to color, very basic like outcome, but there was a lot of layers used in that, and you're gonna save yourself a ton of trouble just by being able to do stuff like that. So I'm gonna make a new layer here. Actually, no, I'm not. Never mind. I see now I had that whole thing filled in blue in the back, so I'm not gonna mess with that. So anyways, yeah, the more layers you have, the better off that you are, even if you think that you're just starting out and really don't need that many. I've had a few people that, asked me which one to buy, and they went with a smaller one, and then I said, hey, you're probably gonna want more layers, and they said, no, I'm not. I'm not a serious artist like you. I don't do this kind of stuff. And then once I started following tutorials online and seeing why you need layers and what it does, as far as the possibilities that you can achieve, they said, you know what, I should have listened to you, because yeah, now I see that layers are super important and stuff, and I should have actually gotten one with the bigger layers. So definitely keep that in mind. And is there anything else with that? No, I think that's it. Of course, I talked about too the refresh rate on the Pros. Starting with the Gen 2s, you get the 120 refresh rate. I did a comparison side by side in that new 2020 review video. For me personally, I don't see a huge difference in the 120 hertz refresh rate. Some people swear by it, but honestly, for me, I don't think it's that noticeable. Switching over here to the new 2020 Pro, I don't think it's been something that's like, oh my gosh, it blows my mind. You can tell it when you're kind of like flipping through other stuff, when you're on the main screens and stuff, and some of that has to do with the processor too. But really, not a huge difference for me, so keep that in mind as well. This is kind of muddied here. I'm not sure exactly how all this ties in, so I'm just guessing here. So that's not your intentions, Bad Squirrel Art. I apologize. I'm trying to do my best here. So that's it from Will. Thanks so much for that. Eclipto Man says, what's your biggest fear? Yeah, so this, I'm not sure if you're talking about my biggest art fear or my biggest fear in general. So I'll just talk biggest fear in general. Bats. I don't like bats. I know that sounds like a weird, people are with spiders and snakes and stuff, but yeah, not big on bats. So the reason being is 'cause a few times we've had bats in our house. Just like when you're, bringing in stuff at night from the car, like if you go to the grocery store and you kick open the door and you don't think anything of it at the time, and the next thing you know, you've got a bat flying around your house. It's not the coolest thing. They just freak me out when inside the house because they're so quiet and you don't really hear them, and it's just this weird, eerie, quiet flight thing that I just hate. And they dive bomb and stuff like that, and it's just, kind of crazy. And that's my biggest fear. It's not even so much that I'm scared of them. I just really don't like them, especially being in the house. So that's my answer to that. Thanks so much for that question. Hopefully that's the answer you want. I don't know, or if you thought something else, like my biggest fear is in art, or I don't know. Next up, MS273X. I'm a beginner in art and digital art. I like cartooning, but I feel like I am lost. I don't know which style of art I go with, which cartooning style I go with, and that makes problem to me, as I cannot create characters. So I think that's a thing a lot of artists struggle with starting out. They want to have their own style. They want to, pick a style and just go with it, and they want to develop it really quick. And it's kind of, jumping the gun a little bit. Really, you need to get the fundamentals down more than anything else to start out with. Then once you understand the basic, shapes that make up designs, how to do proportions, how to do, perspective, how to do all this other stuff, then you can kind of start fine-tuning that and, developing a style for yourself. One thing I talked about, I think it was in the video of, tips for artists, 5 tips for artists in 2020, was talking about the fact of, looking at your favorite artist, seeing their work, seeing what you like about that, and then kind of using that as a basis to start learning. From there, see if there's any interviews with them online where they talk about where they got their inspiration from, and then look up those artists that they were inspired by. Then you can kind of see how those artists affected their style, how those artists you know, kind of formed who they eventually became as an artist. And I think that's a really good way to kind of understand how artists develop styles. As far as for me, I talked about before, you know, some of my favorites and growing up being Bill Watterson from Calvin and Hobbes and Jim Davis from Garfield, and really those, you know, old school cartoonists, and then you know, moving forward later on to other artists, and just kind of developing this overall style that just is almost like a conglomerate of years of, you know, just being inspired by other artists and learning, and then, like I said, just making a voice for yourself through your art. And that's the best way to kind of approach it. So take your time. Don't really, like I said, rush anything. Definitely start out with those basics and go from there. So good question. Next one, let me look up here too and see how my camera's doing on battery. Okay, got 10% battery left, so I'm not sure how much longer I'm gonna do this. I might have to kick off and back on. What art piece project have you made that you're most proud of? That one is from Blue Ben 75. Once again, that Unicorns and Zombies, like I said, just because the amount of work that it took to go into that was a lot, and it just, you know, was a piece I was really proud of, or a kind of project that I was really proud of, because so much did go into it, and I think it turned out really well. So that's, once again, the answer to that question. So thanks for that one. Next one up is Catherine Wade. Do you enjoy traditional art, or do you prefer to stick with digital? Love your work, and you've taught me so much. So thanks for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, personally for me, I do like digital better. And, you know, to each their own on this, but really for me, digital just provides me a quick and easy way to be able to kind of, you know, monetize and sell my art. Of course, with traditional, you could always go and, you know, make scans of your art and do prints and so on and so forth. But with that, of course, it's not immediate. So with me, one of the platforms that I use, except for right now, which we'll get to in a second, is Merch by Amazon. You know, I can sit all day and draw something and have it up on a product by the end of the night and available for purchase. So that's kind of cool to me. I like being able to have that instant gratification and that instant kind of availability of my work. You don't really get that with traditional art so much. And even worse, if you decide not to, you know, make prints, or if it's something, let's say like a sculpture that you decide not to make a, you know, a cast of. And so you've got something that you can kind of replicate over and over again, and you're doing it just one time. For me, and the way that I work, I think it's a waste of time personally, just because, like I said, I like to have that kind of income that is perpetual, gets to a point where it's passive, because you are, you know, just listing stuff and it's selling, and you don't have to do any extra work with it. You don't have to print stuff. You know, you can use your other time creating. So that's, you know, something to think about too. I love sculpting a ton, but like I said, it's just, for me, the time that goes into it, I like to invest it as, you know, pieces for myself. It's not stuff that I would sell. So it makes it a little bit more personal, and I know that the time invested is going to be something that I'm going to kind of just have it sitting on my shelf forever. So that's the way that I kind of approach that as well. So good question though. And traditional, like I said, I still like to mess around with traditional, but it just definitely has taken a back seat to everything else. So good question. Next one up, Coco EB. Have you ever tried manga? So yeah, I mean, of course, just playing around, but really, once again, back to developing, you know, that personal art style. And I just realized that yellow looks really weird because I've got it on the wrong layer. Ha ha ha. So I'm gonna erase that. I was wondering why that was turning out so weird. So yeah, I mean, you know, just playing around, but really back to developing your own style. I don't draw it a lot just because I think it's one of those things that that's a certain style of art, and not ripping on that style of art at all, but a lot of that stuff personally looks the same. A lot of artists try to get the exact same style in that, and it doesn't really allow the artist to develop a, you know, unique voice to their artwork, because they're trying to make it look like everybody else's. You've got to have, you know, the eyes a certain way, you've got to have the mouth and the expressions a certain way. And I know that's not true for all of it, but that's just my general consensus looking at it. So that's why I steer clear of it. And my camera just died, so we're back at it. I knew that was gonna happen. But no, like I said, I know there's a lot of famous, manga artists out there who have made a name for themselves. And for me personally, it's just not, something that the style that I would want to go with, just because I want it to have a little bit more of, like I said, my kind of touch on it, and to be able to make it to look a certain way. It's just not the route that I go with my artwork. But, I do have an appreciation for it. It's some good stuff, just not my cup of tea, so to speak. So thanks for that question, Coco EB. Shelly O Pearls has another question. Is it possible to insert art content from one canvas to another without degrading quality? Example, I've drawn a female character on one canvas, a male character on another, but I want them to be on the same canvas without redrawing. If so, how? I'm using Procreate and iPad. So yeah, there's really not a way to do that, and that's one of the downfalls of Procreate, just one of the things that it doesn't do right. Looking at this too, I think I want these back ones to be that yellow color now instead of that blue color, so I'm going to go back in there and change these to yellow. So anyways, yeah, it's just the app itself, one of the limitations. Anytime that you resize something, move it around on the canvas, it does lose quality. Procreate has talked about this, or Savage, the developers of Procreate, and said it's because Procreate is raster based is why that happens. But really, it's not so much that, and that's a simple explanation. And I don't have the, I guess, legit explanation of why, because, there's other programs that are raster based as well, and they are able to, not lose quality. Because here's the problem. When you're moving a raster-based image around like that, if you're not making it, super small to super big, if you're just, moving it around the canvas, or even still, if you're making it from big to small, you shouldn't lose quality the way that Procreate does if it was just the fact that it was raster-based. Yes, you do lose quality when you go from small to big, but really going from big to small, you shouldn't lose the quality like you do in Procreate. So like I said, just one of the limitations with Procreate as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, that's about it with that. Definitely think about using another program if you are moving stuff around. I'm going to bump the camera here because this thing moved my little video out cable, and every time I do my stroke, it's kind of messing up. So I'm gonna bounce. It's gonna bounce for a second until it resets itself. So yeah, that's what I do. If I've got to finish stuff or move stuff around, I will always move my stuff over into Photoshop to finish the design. That's why if you watch the video that I did about the how to draw or how to do coloring books, and how I took everything from Procreate into Photoshop, that was why I did it like that, was because of the limitations of Procreate. So good question though. Like I said, just use a different program. Next one up, Scott Hagel. How do you balance what you share with your patrons on Patreon versus what you share with the world on YouTube? How do you arrive what is fair for Patreon subscribers, and how do you do special things for them, or they just get more? So honestly, you might be out of the loop on this. I haven't done Patreon since I think January was my last month. And to be honest, one of the reasons why I stopped doing Patreon was kind of based on this. It was hard to decide exactly, how much to provide as far as content wise. I always felt that I wasn't providing enough, but at the same time, the content that I was providing, I didn't have a ton of Patreons or patrons. So it kind of almost felt like, I guess, like wasted time as far as the content that I was providing. Not enough people were seeing it. So yes, I was getting, monthly patrons, payments and stuff like that. But at the same time, I guess for me, it felt like I don't really care about the money that's coming in. I would rather help more people, I guess, see the stuff and learn from the stuff. So knowing that, a video on there might be 15, 20, 30 people that see it a month. The amount that I was making on there didn't really justify or make me feel good about the amount of people, like I said, that were seeing it and the time that was put into it. I would rather not make the money and put out more content on YouTube, I guess. And that's kind of what I started doing after getting out of Patreon. And that was kind of my approach to that. As far as the content that I provided, I used to do, you know, a monthly Q&A that was live, and a live like draw session like you see now. The other thing that I would do would be to send out, there was different, you know, tier levels, but I did monthly stickers to where I would send out stickers along with a card to anybody on the $10 tier or above. And that was a lot of fun because it was always cool to, you know, get the cards ready and get the stickers ordered and decide what I was going to use that month for that month's sticker and design something. And that was a lot of fun. But like I said, it just came down to the time that it took to do everything and the amount of content that I was able to produce that wasn't being seen by enough people to, you know, kind of justify it. Like I said, I'm, you know, doing stuff like this. I'm not in the mindset of, oh, I'm going to get rich off of providing these. I just really want to put the value and the content out there for people. So if I can reach more people and make less, I would honestly rather do that, because I know eventually down the line, you know, more people are going to see it and it's all going to work out in the end. But that's my thought on there. Now my battery on the iPad's going, man. All right, so that's it for that question. So hopefully if you're thinking about starting a Patreon, personally, I don't think the time is worth it, but that's to each of you guys to decide. So thanks for that question, Scott. Next one up is Monique. What advice would you give that would be the best thing to improve someone's drawing skills? How could you get into being a children's illustrator? So as far as increasing your drawing skills, I've talked about this before. Everybody else does too, and it sounds cliche, but honestly, you need to push yourself to draw every day. I know that sounds basic and cliche, but that's what you need to do. On top of that, you also, to increase your drawing skills, you need to get out of your comfort zone. I know there's a lot of artists out there that'll just draw the same things every single day, and that's really not going to help you in the long run. Really push yourself. Here's the cool thing to remember and think about. With art in general, everybody wants to show off their art online. Everybody wants to make a name for themselves and so on and so forth. But really, you don't have to show your artwork to anybody. You can make something just for yourself at home. You don't have to show it to anybody. So you can make something that's absolute hot garbage, and it's really up to you if anybody sees it. So I know a lot of people are afraid of what other people are going to say and so on and so forth. But if you don't like it, don't post it online. You don't have to be that person that, you know, shows off every single thing. Get out of your comfort zone, really kind of push yourself to do stuff that you aren't comfortable with, that's not something that's in your wheelhouse. So whether it be, you know, doing, you know, landscapes, or learning how to draw realistically, or if you draw realistically, learning how to draw cartoons, stuff like that, and just kind of push yourself. So that's my advice there. As far as becoming a children's book illustrator, there's no right or wrong answer with that. I mean, what do you consider a children's book illustrator? With, you know, KDP, you can go ahead and, you know, make your own books and illustrate them. Or you just wanting to work for a company doing children's book illustrations. And then the question is, you know, what kind of company? Because are you working for a company that actually is a book publisher? Or once again, are you taking commission pieces from somebody that's just self-publishing themselves? You know, do you consider that a company? Because if you do, then you could do them yourself and consider yourself a company. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. Breaking into, you know, actual publishers, it's going to be hard because a lot of them don't take unsolicited manuscripts. You actually have to have an agent before your stuff even gets looked at by somebody. So, you know, having that as a long-term goal, not to talk you out of it by any means, but it's going to be a struggle, and it might not be something that happens. So once you get to that point, honestly, you're going to have to work on a portfolio, get an agent. It's going to have to be a lot of stuff that you're going to have to think about. So I would definitely, like I said, if you are worried about improving your drawing skills, I would not even recommend worrying about becoming, you know, an illustrator for children's books. It sounds like you're just starting out and you've got a long way to go. So once again, don't really put the cart before the horse, as they say. You need to focus on the fundamentals, and then once you start getting, you know, a style of your own, and so on and so forth. That's really what you need to focus on now rather than looking down the road that far. Really focus on that. Next part of Monique's question is, okay, for the last, won't go over, see, I won't overdo it with questions, but I have one more. How can I turn my art into a successful business? We're going to talk more about that at the end because there's a lot of those questions. And then for real, last question, the way technology is today, how can you pretty much get how you can pretty much get everything from the internet? Do you think going to school for art is a good idea or waste of money? Because I could just learn on the internet in your videos and Skillshare to help me improve my work. Your videos are super helpful, by the way. So number one, thanks again for that. I appreciate it. Number two, once again, I have a hard time answering this question because everybody is going to be different in this regard. Okay, and we're back at it again. My camera overheated, so I had to let it sit and cool down for a little bit. So back to Monique's question. Let me pull it back up. We were talking about school, and like I was getting ready to say, school is one of those things that's hard because everybody learns differently. Everybody needs something different. So I don't want to say school is definitely one of those things that you don't want to consider. Yes, there's a ton of stuff out there. There's a ton of information. So it might not be necessary for everybody to do the school thing like they previously did, just because, like you said, the day and age we live in, there's so much available out there at your disposal all the time. So consider that. Then also consider where you're learning this stuff from. It might not be the best choice depending on, where you're picking up the information from. It's really one of those things. You've got to decide to invest your time wisely based upon the different sources that you're learning from. So definitely kind of research and see who's the best to learn from. There's a lot of channels out there that you can get information from that's valuable. A lot of, like you said, Skillshare classes, so on and so forth. But like I said too before, about just kind of learning stuff that you're not usually comfortable with, stuff that's outside your wheelhouse, and kind of pressing yourself to do stuff that you're not usually used to doing is going to be key with that. School, like I said, it's good. You've got structure there. You've got professors that could provide you, a lot of learning opportunities that you aren't going to have online. But then again, at the same time, take into consideration, I hear a lot of people that have gone to school, they got the art side of it, but they did not get any of the business stuff. So if you want to start making money from your art and you want to actually put your art into, a career, there might be more viable options to learn that online. And that's something, like I said, that a lot of the schools aren't going to teach you. It's going to be possibly, trying to get a job just at a graphic design firm or so on and so forth. And if you're not looking for that, that might be, kind of a detriment to what you're trying to accomplish. This thing keeps changing color. I gotta switch this back, keep messing with it. So that's my take on that. I don't want to talk you out of it. I don't want to talk you into it. Everybody's going to be different. So next one up, thanks for that. Next one up is Antonio. Says, hi BJ, sometimes I work with complex brief and sometimes I have problem with copy, paste, warp. I lose quality. Make a better result. Once again, back to the previous question, Shelly's, you're gonna lose quality anytime that you move stuff around. If you use warp, if you use, the freeform, transform, distort, any of that stuff, you're going to drop in quality. So I would definitely, if you're using, Procreate as something to make professional briefs that are going to be printed, so on and so forth, you're going to have to look for another program to kind of finish up everything. Procreate, at the core is just an illustration program. So I know a lot of people, which we'll get to in a second here, are looking at Procreate to do absolutely everything for them. Technically, there are ways around and the ways that you can make it do what you want to do, but the results are not going to be the results that you need at a professional level. You're going to have to cut corners, and those corners are not ones that as somebody doing work for somebody else or even for yourself and printing that work, it's not something that you want to cut. It's going to show in the quality of your final product, and you really need to be able to use other programs as well. So Photoshop, like I said, fantastic choice there. Clip Studio Paint Pro is another fantastic program that you can use if you're using stuff to do books or publishing or so on and so forth, definitely InDesign is an option there from Adobe, or Affinity now makes Affinity Publisher for the desktop. You can get that. You can use that. Those Affinity apps actually, or Affinity programs, are on sale right now due to the overall pandemic going on right now. They're running a half off sale, so now would be a fantastic time to kind of dive into that, and hopefully I'll be able to do some more tutorials focusing on Affinity here in the future too, so keep an eye out for those. But definitely, like I said, just don't get stuck with the one app. It's not, as much as I love Procreate, it's not the be-all, end-all app that's going to let you do every single thing as an artist. So don't approach it from that standpoint. Next up is Brad. And Brad says, you know of any way to screen record your Procreate paintings in 16 by 9 inch? For YouTube videos, the overhead shots are cool, but it'd be nice to have the option to just screen record as well. Able to screen record, but maybe due to the size of my iPad doesn't work, 10.2 inch. Been trying to figure this one out. Maybe if you make the canvas a 16.9 inch ratio and export, but then you have a weird canvas size. So yeah, if you are just using the built-in function, so iPads and iPhones and so on and so forth can just do a straight screen record. So doing that, you're going to see everything here. So you're going to see, you know, the gallery up here, so on and so forth. If you exit back to the home screen, it's going to record that. It's not recording from Procreate itself. It's actually recording what's on the screen. And yeah, it's not going to be a 16.9 inch because your screen's not 16.9 inch. You know, if it's the 10.2 or the 12.9, it's going to be in that same ratio. So it's not going to record in the 16.9. Yes, that is the option. If you want to record, you need to make the canvas size 16.9. However, doing that, it's not going to record everything here. So like when I go here to the layers, when I go to the colors, it's just going to be that kind of time-lapse export that is built into Procreate. So with that, it's just going to be a time lapse. I find that people don't really like the time lapses as well. They're watching videos to kind of learn the technique. That's why too, with the, you know, actually doing a screen cap, that's why I don't even like the screen caps in general, just because they can't see what you're doing as far as the technique goes. They're just seeing you click here and there and moving stuff around. And I think it's better to actually, you know, physically see your hand on the screen and see what you're making. So kind of keep that in mind. But yeah, there's no way to actually do it unless you just want to do, like I said, an overhead shot like this and record everything, which, truth be told, I think is the best possible option. So if you're definitely thinking about doing a YouTube channel or something, let me know. Want to see what you're able to come up with. So good question there, Brad. Thanks for asking that. Next up is Beth. It says, hey BJ, thanks for all you do in your time. It's much appreciated. Please explain how to show a quick demo on how to format, lay out a page setup or spread setup for a children's book or coloring book in the Procreate app. I'm stumped on how to add a 0.125 inch on dimensions, and if my illustrations require a spread, where's the gutter? I'll include a picture that I search on Google to help me, but I guess I'm having a hard time understanding the setup. So this kind of goes back to what I was just talking about. Procreate's not the be-all, end-all app. Yes, you can create a book from start to finish in Procreate now that they have that PDF export option. But basically how that works is it's taking each individual layer and exporting it as a page. So the reason why this is not a good choice, if you're printing this out, you want it to be the highest quality resolution that you can get. Otherwise, it's going to look like trash when it's printed at the printer. So once again, back to the layer limitations of Procreate. If you're printing something out and are doing a 30-page book, and those pages are front and back, you need 60 illustrations. So you need a 60-layer canvas, and the canvas size that's going to allow you to have 60 layers is going to be just a really, really low-res canvas that's not going to be good for printing. So you're already kind of setting yourself up for failure, because you print this and then let's say you're doing it on KDP and you're getting it into people's hands and so on and so forth, and you're getting reviews saying, yeah, this looks like, you know, trash, and it's pixelated and everything's blurry and it's horrible. So yeah, can you do it in Procreate? Yes. Do you want to? No, you don't want to. That's why I haven't gone over that before, because it's a horrible idea. But let's say you are, wanting to use that image that you put up, that I put up on the screen that you attached to the message. of how to do the spread. Basically with that, you would just go up to your wrench icon here, add, insert a photo, insert that into Procreate, and use that as your guidelines. Put it on the bottom layer, and then once you're done getting everything where it needs to be, you just need to turn it off. You just need to make sure that that canvas size is the exact size of, you know, the book that you're doing. But like I said, I would not recommend doing it. It's not a good idea, and it's not going to look good. Definitely, like I said, research some other options, other apps or programs that you can use, because Procreate is not going to be the way that you want to approach that. I want to, you know, kind of set you guys up for success if you are taking the time to, you know, start doing these different money-making ideas with your art. And if you're putting a lot of time into doing something, I think it's worth doing well. It's nothing worse than wasting all that time and then starting to get reviews and having people bash your stuff just because the quality isn't up to par with what they expect or what they've gotten with, you know, other sellers on Amazon. So that's why it's not me, you know, trying to not show you guys or anything like that, or not wanting to put the time into it. I just don't want to lead you guys down the wrong path and having you focus on learning something that's actually going to, you know, be a bad thing in the long run. I want you guys to have as much information that is going to set you up for success as possible. So that's why I haven't gotten into, you know, showing anything like that, just because it's not recommended. So thanks so much for the question though. Next up is Sam. Sam says, for those like me who are just drawing stuff, what are some exercises you can focus on the art fundamentals you may be lacking or have neglected? Form, perspective, light, and values. Once again with this, honestly, just following some really basic YouTube tutorials. With that, most of my tutorials that I do, like I said, I like to do the cartoony stuff, and it's, you know, kind of showing you my thought process behind that. I know with the exception of the Cartooning 101 series, I don't get a lot into just super fundamentals and basics. But I will kind of steer you guys, I guess, in the right direction. I know, and this is going to be one of those things that's going to be a growing thing down the road, but Christine from the Keep Creating group, she just started a YouTube channel, and one of her first videos she did was talking about 2-point perspective. So definitely hop on over. I'll link her channel in the description below. And look for videos like that that just, you know, kind of, instead of jumping into, you know, drawing something like this, this might be a little bit more, and not like this, because obviously I'm coloring in the artwork here, but my regular videos, you know, jumping into something like that might be a little bit too advanced, and you want some of that basic stuff to get more accustomed to. So definitely look up videos like that. Look up, you know, perspective, 2-point perspective, just, you know, basic shadows and lighting. If you see tutorials with, you know, just, let's see, looking at thumbnails, you know, just seeing, you know, triangles like this, and how they do the three-dimensional, and how they show the light sources coming in, which I've talked about doing light sources before, but that might be something to just kind of research and just get those basics under your belt before jumping in too hard onto something else. So good question though, appreciate that one. Jacob Smith, any advice on how I can find my new art style, especially for cartoons? Yeah, like I, you know, talked about earlier in that other question, it's really, like I said, researching other artists that you like and seeing who they learn from and kind of going from there. I really recommend, I guess my biggest thing is not copying another artist's art style, and making it your own is the key. You don't want to have somebody look at your art and say, oh, that's so-and-so. Well, no, that's mine. Well, that artist, you know, spent a lot of time developing that style, I'm sure. And, you know, biting another artist's art style and saying it's your own, or just using their style for yours because they're, you know, successful and you like theirs, it's really doing yourself a disservice. You're always going to kind of be compared to them. And since they were first, they're probably going to be better no matter how much you practice. So that's why I don't recommend, you know, using it as a total, you know, jumping off point that you stick with for the entire length of your art career. Definitely kind of go back and forth and see exactly how you can incorporate, you know, a few different art styles from different people to make something totally unique in your own. And honestly, for an artist, it's gonna be a much more rewarding thing down the line once you've developed that art style. It's going to make you feel better about what you've accomplished instead of, constantly comparing yourself to the other person. So thanks for that one. Next one up, Red Animations. Are you going to make a video on Procreate animation? Once again, I've made videos on Procreate animation. They're on the channel. I don't go too deep into the videos though. Do just really basic stuff to give you the ideas of what animation takes. So how to set up the layers, how the foreground and backgrounds work, so on and so forth. Don't get into too much more past that, just because, once again, I'm not really big into animating. And we'll get into more here shortly with this. But like I said, everything with art that I do, I kind of look at it from a monetary standpoint. What's going to make the most sense as far as being able to use my art to make money. And with animation, it takes a ton of work. It's not something that I can scale as far as using one animation for something else and, selling it. I like to be able to scale my designs and use one design for multiple products or multiple niches. And we'll talk more about niches here shortly too. So that's why I don't get into it too heavy. I won't be doing like a full on like animated short type of movie type of thing or anything like that. It's just not something that I personally do. So definitely if you want the kind of just basic nitty gritty introduction to the animation, check out those videos. I did one on when it was first introduced with the GIFs, and then also one where it was like a full-blown animation with the Procreate 5 update. So I'll link those in some cards as well. Check those out. But thanks for that question. Next one up is Hisham, maybe. Hopefully I said that right. Never understood the concept of shadows and highlights in cartoons. Imagining a light source. Is there a better way to understand this? Once again, I've made multiple videos on this now. The first one that I touched on with this was some time ago with the chicken. It's the turduncan, the chicken, the turkey, and the duck video. I'll go ahead, I guess, and link that in a card. That was the first one I really touched on, just highlights and shadows. And then the other day, last week, I posted the mouse drawing, and part 3 was how to add the shadows and highlights there. So I'll go ahead and I guess link to those as well. Once again, if you've got a question, a lot of these I will have probably already covered on the channel. So definitely hop back and do some looking on there and see what's available. So thanks for the question though. Appreciate that one. Next one up is Shauna. Said, I'm a traditional artist who would like to do digital art, but do not have an iPad. I also have a Wacom pad, but not a screen type. I'm having all kinds of issues just getting it set up and being able to store and transfer files with software like Corel Painter 15 to Kindle, for example, to make coloring books. Please do a video about how to make and publish kids' activity books. So once again, I did an entire like hour-long video on how to publish a coloring book to Amazon KDP. So hopefully you saw that one. I'm guessing maybe you didn't, but if you saw it and you want me to do one just strictly for activity books, it's going to be the exact same thing. A coloring book, built the exact same way. It's up to you what you put on the pages. It's more about how to get the pages there. So check that out. I'll link that. And that one, honestly, you might find informative just because that one, I started out with the drawings on the iPad, just as far as them being done on the iPad, but everything from that point on then shifted over to the computer. So it's kind of set up the way that you would need it. I used Photoshop to kind of prep everything and then used InDesign. So you wouldn't even need the Procreate steps at the beginning or the Photoshop steps. You're just going to need to know how to get everything in to the book design. I'm using InDesign for that in the tutorial. So definitely check that out. Walks you through the entire process from making and setting up the book, even clear through to actually uploading it on the platform on Amazon and KDP. So check that out. I'll link that as well. So thanks for that question. Next up, XXX Ghost Pants says, how long does it take to make a artwork? It takes a long time to make a artwork. Depending on the artwork, if it's something that's crazy detailed, I could spend days on a piece of artwork. On most of my designs, my videos are shot in real time. For the most part, I don't use any screen lap or time lapse or anything like that. It's all captured with the camera as I'm doing it, so you can kind of see in the videos exactly how long it takes me. Most of those videos I like to keep in, you know, half an hour to an hour at the most, usually half an hour to 45 minutes. If it's something I'm working on personally, I might take a little bit of time, just because with those videos, I don't like to go back and forth too much. I don't like to do a lot of erasing. I don't like to, you know, put extra stuff in there that makes the video longer that you don't need to see. So some of those videos, the artwork might not be perfect. It might not be something that I would usually use on personal like products if I'm uploading those to print on demand platforms. But at the same time, it kind of gives you an overall view. So if it's something I'm using on a print on demand platform, you know, I might take a couple hours to do a design. It just really depends on the design. So no real answer to that question because it's going to vary. But thanks. Next one up is Sariam. Sorry if I mispronounced that. What was your first commission and were you afraid of not getting the correct quality? Honestly, I think my first commission was back in high school. I did this massive hand-painted sign for a furniture company in town, and it really wasn't something I was too worried about not getting the correct quality. I mean, I knew exactly, you know, what was required and the size and everything else. As far as digital, I don't really even remember my first digital commission or anything like that. That was my first, I guess, real commission was many years ago back in high school. And all right, so back at it, had to pause the video again to charge the iPad, free up some space on the memory card. The next one is from XKYRYNNOX, and this one said, how to combat fears of drawing digitally for a traditional artist, and how do I save my artwork so I don't lose them in Procreate? So number one, I think you're in a really great position as far as fear-wise, because digital art, you can't screw up on. It's not, you know, one of those things that if you mess up, it's locked in. That's one of the awesome things about digital art is you've got that undo feature. You can just back out if you don't like something. So you're not wasting materials. You're not wasting anything at all. So I don't think really starting out with digital art, you should be too scared or worried, to be honest with you. Once again, back to what I was talking about earlier, that fear of kind of failure. You don't have to post your artwork online for other people to see. So you know, you're the only one that's doing it. Make it for yourself. Don't worry about what other people are going to think. So I think digital art's a good way not to deal with that usual fear that you would with regular, you know, traditional art. It is one of those things. It's a learning process, just like anything else. It's really a tool. So look at, you know, the digital process as a tool. You're not going to be, you know, perfect and awesome at every single thing you do starting out, just like with traditional art. If you're used to drawing with charcoals and you switch over to painting, you're not going to be the best starting out. It takes time. And digital, like I said, once again, it's a tool. A lot of people think that they are going to get an iPad and they're going to become the most awesome artist ever. What's lacking in their art skills is the use of a digital tool. And if they could just, you know, save up enough money or get an iPad or get, you know, a tablet or something like that, it's going to make them a better artist. And that's not the case. It's just a tool. If you know, suck at art, traditionally, you can't draw anything on paper. You're not necessarily going to be able to draw it with an iPad or a digital medium either. It all comes down to, like I said, building up that skill set and practicing the fundamentals and so on and so forth. So just keep that in mind as you're going forward. Use every opportunity that you have with the new digital iPad and Procreate to your advantage, and don't get too discouraged or, you know, beat yourself up too much if you're not at the skill level as you see in, you know, other people's artwork right off the bat. Think about how long it took them to get to the point that they're at and kind of, you know, judge your success based on your own personal journey down that art road. So for saving stuff on Procreate, number one, when you back out and go to the gallery, it automatically saves. So there's not an actual save feature in Procreate. If that's what you're meaning, if you're talking about how can I back up my artwork to where if something happens to Procreate that I don't lose it, there's a few ways that you can do that. Let's go, I'm gonna grab a piece of paper here because when I pull this up, it's gonna pull all my contacts up and I don't wanna show that on screen. So if you go up here to your wrench icon, so if you hit share, Procreate's gonna bring up your share options. Let that load for a second. So here, like I said, I'm blocking out those contacts. Here you've got the option for AirDrop, message, so on and so forth, but you can use Google Drive. You can use Dropbox to save them. A couple, cheap storage solutions there. If you have a Mac, or you're on, a desktop or a laptop that runs the Mac OS, you can use AirDrop and send them over to the computer, save them to a hard drive there. If you're using one of the newer iPads, you can save them in the file system here and then transfer them over to a hard drive through that USB-C. So there's a few different ways to do that. Always make backups, because yeah, that does really suck if something happens with your iPad and you lose everything. If you've got a problem with Procreate and have to uninstall, reinstall as your only solution for that, I know that can be pretty rough. So definitely check that out and see what options you've got there. So thanks for that question. Next one up is Mike Freestone. Are you hiring? If not, let me know when you are, with the laughing till I'm crying face emoji. So yeah, no, not doing any hiring, Mike. Thanks for the question though. So next one, Terry Mead asks, tips on making money from your art. I've been hearing for years I should be doing that, but no clue where to even start. How did you start? Thanks. And I'm gonna flip through a few of these because they're all kind of the same. Michelle asked, I upload artwork to Merch and Redbubble, and I think you mentioned that you do this too. There are plenty of resources out there for the research and keywording, but not much on the design research process. I'm not really sure what I'm asking, but I love learning about people's creative process. Just for example, do you create assets to put together into designs in different niches? Do you still import your designs to the computer to finish the design? Do you take into consideration all of the sizes in Redbubble? Next one, Jacqueline Escobar, can you advise for someone who's a beginner art where to start to sell its art and start having a profit? I think that we would like to find out, is this something we can take a step-by-step how to start, because sometimes we only know what and where to publish, but not how to start step-by-step. John says, I'm more interested in making money from art. You've already done a great video on this topic, but always looking for more. And then Juan says, on your last video about making money with art, you said you did research on how to make art for niche markets. So that is more likely to sell. Can you explain how and what type of research you're doing? I looked up bestseller coloring books by category. We couldn't find anything that pointed me in the right direction. So I'm going to kind of group all those together. They're all talking about making money with your art. So let's kind of delve in or dive into that. So as far as how did I start making money, from Terry's question, I started out just on POD platforms. I mean, I've always done commission work, but like I've said in previous videos, it's more lucrative if you're able to do it, to actually sell products for yourself. And that's where the total focus of all my energy goes to right now. I don't do any commission work whatsoever. So we're gonna kind of focus on that. If you are looking for commission work, there's a lot of ways out there. You can get your name out through Instagram. There's different design sites like Upwork, Fiverr, which I know a lot of people hate, but that's another option as well. So there's a lot of different opportunities out there for commission-based work, but we're gonna talk about that kind of self-employment, doing stuff for yourself. So started out with POD platforms. I initially started out on, I think it was TeePublic. I actually got a message after one of my Instagram posts from a community manager from them wanting me to start uploading my artwork to TeePublic. I hadn't really looked into print on demand up until that point. So I went ahead and set up an account on TeePublic, but then of course, I kind of always want more information. The more information, the better. So I started looking into other POD platforms. And of course, the one that really stood out to me was Merch by Amazon. There's, like I said, a lot of platforms. You got TeePublic out there, you've got Redbubble, you've got, I'm gonna change this color over here too. You've got Redbubble, there's just so many ones out there. Merch by Amazon is my go-to, my one that I recommend the most, just because Amazon has that huge amount of organic traffic. A lot of people ask me how, I advertise, how do I get people to see my stuff, how much I spend on advertising, what I do with social media to get people to see my stuff. And honestly, I tell people I don't spend any money on advertising, and we'll get to as far as talking about your niches and kind of targeting your customer base. And the reason for that is just because there's so many people on Amazon at any given time looking for a specific thing based around their interest, that if you kind of niche down and you narrow down your target audience, the search function on Amazon basically is going to almost work like advertising for you. And that's kind of the standpoint that I take with it, and that's how I approach it. From TeePublic, I think I started then on Redbubble, which that's changed because I totally cleared off Redbubble, and I'm trying to do a redesign of that, kind of using a different approach, which I'll probably talk about in another video. But from there, like I said, found out about Merch by Amazon. This was when Merch by Amazon was really slow to get new people in. I know since I've talked about this in some videos, people have been applying and getting in a few weeks. I think with Merch by Amazon, for me, it took a few months to get in for the approval process to go through. Also, people asked too, well, I applied and I didn't get, selected. I got a rejection letter. What did I do wrong, or how do I get accepted? Honestly, there's no rhyme or reason. If you apply, one of the things that's good is if you've got like a portfolio on another site for them to see. I know that helps out supposedly, but other people will do that and have a site set up and it doesn't help them get in. So there's really no answer. It is just all just dumb luck almost half of the time. So once I got into Merch by Amazon, then of course started looking into KDP, got into that eventually, which KDP is the Kindle Direct Publishing that I've talked about before with the videos that I did on making your own coloring book. And the reason why POD is so good is because there is no inventory. The designs that you do them completely digitally, and then you upload PNGs to the site. So let's just use Amazon's, for example. Amazon gives you the option to print on t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, pop sockets, V-necks, tank tops, so on and so forth. And then once you make a sale, Amazon actually handles the processing of the payment information. They handle the shipping of the actual product to the customer. Everything is handled by Amazon. So you don't have to do anything. It's completely hands off. Once you upload it, you're good to go. So let's take this into kind of a way to think about, like, if you really want to be self-sufficient and you've got a ton of money coming in later from a business, you've always got to have somebody there running it. So if you want to, let's say, go on vacation somewhere, and I know with all of us, kind of quarantined right now, vacation sounds awesome. We're all stuck inside of our house, but let's say everything opens up and you can go anywhere and you've got this money to go places, but you still got to be running your business. If you're doing physical products, let's say you have your own t-shirt company, either you have to be there to print them or ship them out. Even if you're getting them printed someplace else, you've got to be the one to handle all the customer service, everything, so on and so forth as far as that goes. So even though you are running your own business, even if you are successful, you still really are kind of tied to that. The print-on-demand platform kind of alleviates that, puts all that pressure on the seller. Granted, you might make higher margins doing it yourself, but at the same time, you don't have to worry about some of the same things that you have to worry about if you are doing it all by yourself. So that's one thing I really like about the print-on-demand platforms, is not having to worry about that. You can just kind of up and go and do whatever you want at the drop of a hat and not have to worry about fulfilling orders. That's why I love just digital sales in general. If we're talking about, doing clip art on Etsy or anything like that, even the brushes that I make, I don't have to do anything with those. People just get on, buy them from the different sites that I list them on, and that's pretty much it. I don't have any worries as far as that goes. So that's one of the benefits that I like. That's how I got started. Trying to go through some of these other ones. Redbubble. I know somebody asked as far as, Michelle, do you take into consideration all their sizes in Redbubble? So Redbubble is totally different if you guys aren't familiar, because Redbubble, you can make absolutely everything. I mean, they've got just a nuts amount of stuff on there, like duvet covers and clocks and everything like that. Personally, for me, that's why I'm kind of going through and changing my thoughts on Redbubble, just because I don't really think that offering that many products is the best way to approach your artwork, making it, like I said, a little bit more niche as far as the stuff you're doing, but then also niche as far as the products that you're offering. I think the ability to have that many things, if you select every single thing that Redbubble offers, is kind of overkill. Plus it takes more time to go back through and adjust where the product appears you know, once it's printed on the page or on the, let's say like a mug or a duvet cover, or a dress, they have skirts. I mean, just absolutely everything. So there's a lot more that goes into that I don't really see as being that beneficial. So I personally would just recommend either doing shirts or just stickers or so on and so forth, and going that route with Redbubble. And then if you want to do certain niche things, just clocks or, you know, something like that, I would approach it like that. Let's see here. What else? Jacqueline, her part was step by step on how to do everything. We know what and where to publish, but not by step how. Honestly, with that, I won't do any videos on step-by-step publishing, how to do it, because so many videos like that exist. Step-by-step videos for art exist too, but everybody's approach to art is different. And I think that's the value of, you know, what I try to provide is my own way of doing stuff. Doing a step-by-step video on how to upload to these different sites, everybody uploads the same. It's the exact same process. So there's no reason for me to do a video on it when everybody else already has done a video on it. There's tons of videos like that out there. So definitely just research those videos. The information's out there. To do a video like that myself just seems redundant. So real quick here, I'm gonna go ahead and make a new layer. I'm gonna start kind of adding some extra shadows in here and accentuating some of this stuff. So I'm gonna once again go here and set this one to multiply. And then we're gonna go in and just kind of add some more shadows to this. Oops, I'll go on this one here. I don't know what that one is. So that's why I won't do a video like that. I've talked about it before in my previous videos of, you know, different resources out there that you can use. I need to set this one to clipping mask again. I need to finish up these headphones too. I just noticed that. So that's why I would recommend definitely checking out some of those videos series that I've talked about before, which I'll link some of those in the description as well, so you guys can check out some other people that have already covered that. Like I said, there's tons of information already out there. You just got to look for it and use what's out there to your advantage. So the next one, let's see, just kind of once again touching on some of this stuff. So the making money from your art, and what I was talking before on kind of doing the research process, which is what Michelle talked about. She talked about plenty of resources doing the research and keywording, but not much on the design research. I mean, the design research, that's where you as an artist comes in. The only, I guess, tidbit or type of advice that I would give here, and I talked to someone about this the other day, and we were talking about, you know, doing niches and so on and so forth. If you are doing a certain niche, the design research process is going to be a little bit different. Once you kind of find a niche, and I'll talk about that here in a second, but once you find one, look and see if there is an overall, I guess, aesthetic to that niche already. Is there a certain look and feel of the artwork that's already out there for that niche? The person I was talking to the other day had been focusing on a niche, and it was the vegan niche, and had super dope artwork, like really just fantastic artwork, but their stuff wasn't selling. And once I just kind of took a look into the artwork, and I'm kind of familiar, I don't do a lot of stuff in the vegan niche, and I'm not vegan by any means, but I kind of already knew from previous research and just looking at stuff that's already out there that already sells well, the artwork that this artist was doing, even though it was just top-notch, fantastic artwork, it was not the type of artwork that sells in the vegan niche. It just had a totally different look to it. It did not really, when you first saw it, it did not have that thing that screamed, you know, I'm a vegan. Was a lot more bold, a lot more kind of used like graph style for a lack of a better word, but it had more of that street art feel to it. And you know, the vegan niche really kind of has that kind of wholesome, like homegrown, just very minimalist design to the overall feel of it. And I think that was really kind of what made that not work for this particular seller. So that's something to consider with the design process. That's how it's going to differ than the research on the keywording and the niche process. So keep that in mind. Let's see. Then talking about just making money from the art and the niche and the research for that. and I'll kind of continue talking about what I talked with this other artist about the other day. So I see a lot of people kind of confusing what niches are. Like what Juan said, I looked up bestseller coloring books by category, but couldn't find anything that pointed me into the right direction. Well, the problem is you're looking at that all wrong. If you're doing a search just for best-selling coloring books, that's the easy way to approach that. And there's been a lot of people earlier besides you that did that same research and found that same information. So as far as the best-selling stuff, there's already people that are going to be trying to jump on that as well. Likewise, that stuff is selling for a reason, and it's already been selling probably for a long time. So there was a lot of maybe ads that were run on that to get in front of people. That's a possibility. I'm not saying that you have to run ads like I just talked about, but at the same time, you know, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. Why is it a best-selling book? And just because it is doesn't necessarily mean it's something that you want to jump on. What you want to do is you want to look for those smaller ponds. So let's say the best-selling coloring book is a big pond. You want to look for a niche that's a smaller pond. It doesn't have as many fish in it. It's going to be easier to stand out in that niche. Likewise, somebody before said that my niche is mandalas, you know, the little funky design stuff. That's my niche. That's not a niche. If you type that in to Amazon, there's over 50,000 search results. So that's not a niche. If you wanted to make those types of coloring books and then make it focused on like a specific niche upon itself. So maybe, I don't know, like a cooking one, and that's even wide, but even narrow that down even further. It's hard to say with that because, like I said, it's a big pond. To give you an idea of what I talked about with this artist the other day, I see a lot of people drawing stuff. It's awesome drawings, and they think because it's awesome drawings that that's going to be their key to success. I've seen people do like really kind of cute animal books. So just a huge selection of these different animals, and I'm going to draw these super adorable animals, and it's going to be, you know, just something kids are going to want to draw. Kids love animals, so on and so forth. Well, really, there's so much competition out there, and parents don't really look for something like that right off the bat. For a kid's coloring book of animals, that's the exact same thing you can go to the dollar store and buy for $1. What's really going to set you apart that's going to make a parent want to buy your coloring book for $6 rather than going down to Dollar Tree and buying, you know, 6 coloring books for the same price? So that's where people really, I think, let the artist ego get in the middle of everything, which is definitely not the way to look at this. Instead, and this was the example that I gave this artist I talked to the other day, instead of looking at it like that, how about we look at it like this and think, okay, what kind of animals are there? How about we niche down on the actual animal itself and then kind of go from there? I need to do a white here, so I need to make a new layer, and we're going to change this one. Let's do like a soft light. Let's see what that looks like. Let me set this to clipping mask again. No, yeah, that was pretty good. So I'm just on a white here. We're just going to go in and do some shadows here, or some highlights, I'm sorry. So instead of, like I said, instead of thinking about animals in general, what kind of animals are there? What can we niche down? So case in point that I brought up to this guy was my brother has loved ferrets forever, has owned ferrets for years and years and years, and just got a new ferret. So instead of doing just a generic coloring book of animals, but you target ferret owners. So you've got people that are going to be looking for ferret gifts. You've got people that are going to be looking for, you know, ferret supplies, people that are looking for just all kinds of different ferret stuff. Why not target those as a separate niche instead of going for the, you know, the huge animal thing? Think about it on a smaller scale. Now, are there going to be less people that are searching for ferret stuff than there are that are just in the general, you know, ability to buy like an animal coloring book? Well, yes, but once again, I think animal coloring book is pretty generic and pretty wide. A ferret owner coloring book, it's not going to be as many customers available to you. However, there's gonna be less competition once you actually get out there. So just think about how many different animal coloring books there are, just generic, zoo coloring books or whatever. There's a ton. How many actual ferret owner coloring books that are made specifically for owners of ferrets? And with this, you could even turn it into an activity book. So you could add in, instead of just the coloring pages, you could add in activities. You could add in, a page that it's almost like a baby book, to where you keep different, like first steps of the ferret, like did this day, this day. You could track the food consumption and the diet and stuff like that, on top of having the coloring pages in there. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. That's the way to look at the artwork. Like I said, you can't just draw cool stuff and expect it to sell. You really need to think what your target customer is. Same thing here, thinking about the target customer. Don't think wide. You have to think narrow. Somebody else, speaking of manga, somebody else said, so I need to know why my art isn't selling. I've really kind of been thinking about this. I narrowed it down. My niche is anybody that likes manga. Okay, well, once again, that's not a niche. That's so huge. You're never going to be able to do anything worthwhile with that. It's way, way too big. So that's key step number one. And hopefully you guys are taking notes on this, or at least we'll come back to this. Hopefully you guys are still watching, because I think this is the most important part of this video so far. It's why I wanted to save it for last, because it was what I was going to go into detail with the most. So kind of hang in there through all this. I've talked about this in some interviews before, but I really want to make a point of getting you guys the right idea on this. So that's my main thing. Number one, just focus on the customer, see what you can sell to certain people. So like I said, that was my brother. Look at people in your group of friends or family. Look at professions. What do they do for work? What are their hobbies? You can learn a lot and offer a lot of different niches just by looking at your current set of people that you have around you. Likewise with that, you can do some really cool stuff that you might not know anything about just by picking their brains. So let's say they've got a profession that, like I said, you know nothing about. You can really learn quite a bit just by asking them some questions like, hey, if I did a shirt based around this, what would you want to see on it? And they're going to know a lot more than just doing basic research on the internet. They're going to be able to tell you exactly what is going to sell to that type of customer. So that's another tip that I would really recommend that you guys look into, is kind of utilizing those people that you've got around you to learn as much as you can from. That source of knowledge is really invaluable. Let's see here. What else can I talk about with this? Let me see if there was any exact questions here that I need to follow up on. Do you create assets to put together into designs in different niches? So yes, that is something else I will do. If I'm looking at doing a design in a certain niche, I'll see how I can scale that over and use it for something else. I talked about this in scaling your designs in the series of how to make money with your art. Really, it's working smarter and not harder. So if you can draw one design and then you can use that across multiple niches. Granted, with certain niches, you're not going to be able to use, let's say you're getting into the welding niche. You're not going to be able to use a picture of a welder on a shirt for another niche. That's just not going to happen. But other times, yes, you can use some artwork from one niche to the next. And really, that's kind of what I look for when I'm doing artwork. What can I go through and use from one niche to the next? How can I get the most mileage out of this design that I'm going to sit down and draw? If it's something I'm going to spend time on, I want to be able to kind of, make the most out of it and not waste a bunch of time on something that either A, maybe won't sell ever, or B, is only going to sell a couple of times. So keep that in mind. And really, like I said, the selling a couple of times, that's what you're wanting to look for at the beginning. You don't want something that's going to come out of the gate and just go crazy, because that is really hard to do if you have those expectations to begin with. I would really urge you to lower those expectations. What you want is kind of a slow burn. If you're doing some niches that don't have a lot of traction overall to begin with, what's going to happen is your item's going to sell a few times, and then as time goes on, the rating and the overall sales rank is going to increase over time. And then that's going to become one of the best sellers in that niche just over time. It might not take you know, a super long time, but at the same time, it might take, you know, a few months for it to catch on. It might take a year, but it's going to be one of those designs that sells consistently over time in that niche. And that's what you're looking for. You don't want to throw a ton of time into something that's not going to get seen. Have it seen by a few people, and then those few people are going to constantly help it get seen by other people as the sales come in. So that's the way to kind of think about that as well. Always scale your designs if you can. That is key. Let's see here. What else? That's pretty much it for research too. Just like I said, looking at different jobs, hobbies, professions, stuff like that of people around you. Also, you can try to jump on trends if you want. There's, you know, the Google Trends. You can see what's trending on Google. Of course, with that, always watch out for stuff that's copyrighted or trademarked. Likewise, if you guys are starting out, a couple of sites, uspto.gov, TM Hunt, you can also check. Copyright's gonna be something a little bit different. Trademarks, you're gonna have to make sure you look for the classification too. There's different classes. You need to look if you're doing t-shirts, so make sure it's not trademarked for t-shirts. There's a lot of stuff that goes with that, but once again, tons of videos out there about that. I'll link those down below. So definitely know what you're getting into before you start doing anything like that, because you don't want to infringe on other people's trademarks or copyrights like we kind of touched on before. Last thing I'll talk about is branding. Personally with me, I'm not huge on branding. I like to have my stuff out there, like I said, in just a ton of different niches. If you're planning on taking that approach too, having one brand for everything is gonna look really messy. It's one thing I love about Merch by Amazon is that you can make a brand name for every individual piece that you do. So if you list something under one niche and then list something under a completely different niche, you can change the name brand to something else with the next upload. You don't have to keep it the same. That's one thing I don't like about like Redbubble and stuff. You're gonna have the same name on every single listing. It's all gonna be under one, and it's gonna look really kind of sloppy once somebody goes there and they're seeing, you know, let's say, once again, like shirts for ferrets, and then shirts for welders, and then shirts for cooks, and it's just not gonna have a cohesive feel to it. So that's why I urge you to not really think about a brand if you're planning on niching out like this. And if you plan on it, that's the key. So if you are thinking to yourself right now, I don't want to niche out that low. I just want to focus on like really cool, you know, street art stuff that's going to sell. Once again, you're not a brand right now. If you start a brand and it's in just like, say, like street art graffiti style, that's your main focus is that type of artwork. You're going for more of a lifestyle brand. It takes forever to build up a lifestyle brand. You're gonna be really disappointed, I think, when you don't see any results, because you can't just make a brand and have people, you know, jump on it unless you're this massive influencer on Instagram. But even with that, I read a story, I don't know the influencer or anything else. I think it was on Instagram, might've been on YouTube. This chick had, I forget how many, like 1.2 million followers maybe. It was high, I don't know exactly, but then she launched a lifestyle brand that was her clothing and her name on it and just all this other stuff, and ran you know, a campaign to sell shirts, and she sold, I think it was like 2 or 3 shirts the entire time, and she's this huge influencer. So even that, even if you've got like the backing and the kind of social standing to drive people to your work, it doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna buy it. That's why a lot of people ask me too, like, why don't you post your artwork? Why don't you post more stuff for sale? I want to see your shirts. I want to, so on and so forth. It's because mine isn't branded. It's not, I focus on the niche. I don't focus on me as the artist. And that's the exact reason. I like to let the customer find it themselves. And that's my advice to you. Let the customer find it. Let go of kind of the ego of wanting your artwork to be seen and having your name attached on it. I personally don't care if my artwork never gets recognized, as long as it's bringing in money and allows me to sit and draw and do these videos like this for you guys. Like, I'm cool with that. I don't need, you know, the accolades. I don't need my name on everybody's shirt. It just does not matter to me. It's not something that I find important. And if you let go of that ego and kind of approach it the same way, I just really guarantee that you're going to find a lot more success with this stuff than if you go the other route and, you know, just have to blast yourself out there on absolutely everything. It's going to help you succeed a lot more, I guarantee. So that's it for my thoughts. I think I'm pretty much done here. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. I know this thing is super long, but I get constant questions about things, and you know, trying to give everybody the answers. And I know some people, like I said, don't watch every video and they're gonna miss stuff. So hopefully I answered a lot of the common questions today that I usually get in, I think, pretty deep detail. The kind of last bit of this is really the stuff I wanted to focus on. So hopefully you guys got a lot of information out about that, because I see some people posting stuff that they've made since watching these videos, and I can tell right off the bat it's not going to sell, and I feel bad, but I've provided, you know, I think as much as I can to answer some of this stuff for you guys, and hopefully this makes it a little bit clearer. And I don't want you guys to waste your time or have high hopes for something that's not going to take off. So like I said, really niche down on this stuff, really look at opportunities that are out there that maybe aren't being filled right now. That's the main thing you want to do, is provide something that nobody else is providing, or if somebody is providing it in a lower volume, provide it better. So that's what I urge you guys to do today. That's the finished colored piece. Turned out okay, not super crazy. Talking and doing this all at once, I probably would have picked some different colors and maybe some better ones and had some stuff kind of pop a little bit more, but that gives you an idea there. So hopefully that helped you out, Bad Squirrel Art, as far as using the different multiply layers. And that's it for today's video. I appreciate you guys watching. Once again, if you like today's video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, all that good stuff. If you guys have any extra questions as far as stuff covered in today's video, definitely leave me a comment below. And then as for me, I can be found online, bjdell.com, as well as on Instagram and Twitter at bjdell. And if you guys have not yet joined, hop on over to Facebook. That's where a lot of these questions came from today. I've got the group over there called Keep Creating a Learn, Draw, Share Art Community, where you can share your art, meet new friends, and just overall become a better artist through the support of others. So I want you guys to join in there. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep creating.